Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Marcial. I'm with PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, out in California. We're based out of Oakland now. Actually, we were based out of San Francisco, but we just got a new headquarters in Oakland, and we're in the process of populating it. Again, some of you have been to webinars this morning or yesterday, and thank you for attending today's session. Today, we're talking about maybe the obvious, the fact that buildings are getting smarter, and that we need the right people in place, not only to design and engineer those smart buildings, but once they're built or once they're designed, they need to be built. And once they're built, they're occupied and they need to be operated and maintained. So today we're going to focus on most of the operations side of things. So the people that are operating the facilities and overseeing the facilities. And we have a few panelists. You have their bios as part of the website. Today we have Laure-Jeanne Davignon with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. We also have Melanie Danuser, who's with the Smart Building Center. And we also have Maric Munn, who is a principal at San Timoteo Energy Associates. So we have created some presentations for you. I will kick it off, and then each of the panelists will take about 10 minutes or so to give kind of general opening comments based on what they bring to this discussion. So I think if we can go to the slides now, I will kick it off with what I have to share. Okay, so again, I'm with Pacific Gas and Electric Company. We are a dual fuel utility that serves most of Northern California, from about Bakersfield down in the Central Valley, all the way up to the border of Oakland and California. And within the utility, so large company, 23-some thousand people, we have a group that is focused on energy efficiency. And then within energy efficiency, we have a smaller group that's focused on training the people that are designing, building, maintaining, and operating buildings and building systems. So it's a huge audience, and it's a pretty big territory as well. But the WE&T program, our Workforce Education and Training Program, has been around in some variation since about 1978. So we have a long history in training the workforce. Originally, it started with training people how to do weatherization in residential multifamily homes. But over the years, we added energy centers that focus on commercial food service as well as non-residential buildings. So my presentation is going to be about, I think, one of the things that the other panels will talk about, which is the training of the workforce, looking at the skills gaps, and how do you go about training not just the incumbent workforce, the people that are designing buildings today, but the people that are maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple of years away from entering the workforce. But we also have programs that address people that may not even have heard of energy efficiency, meaning those people, the students that are in K through 12 programs. So we, as I like to say that WE&T, our program, our audience is not only broad in terms of the professions that we serve, but also just along people's career paths. I once heard the term K through gray. So that's our audience, is K through gray people that are going to or can touch buildings in some fashion, all in the name of energy efficiency and occupant well-being. So why don't we go to the next slide, Melanie? So at a very high level, our program has three components. We have Career Connections that focuses on K through 12 students and teachers. We have another program called Career and Workforce Readiness, which is focused around disadvantaged workers and helping them overcome personal and/or systemic barriers to entering the energy efficiency workforce. And then our third subprogram is called Integrated Energy Education and Training. And that one's focused on the incumbent workforce. So probably folks like the people on this call. And we also develop collaborations with other organizations. So I'm going to take a minute and maybe just go through each one at a very high level, or maybe a little deeper to give you a flavor of the kind of things that each of the programs does. Okay, next. So career connections, I should also say that career connections and career and workforce readiness, those are programs that are administered by PG&E on behalf of the 4 investor-owned utilities in California, and those being San Diego Gas and Electric, Southern California Gas Company, Southern California Edison, and ourselves, Pacific Gas and Electric. So they're all funded by those IUs, and career connections and career and workforce readiness are statewide programs. A little bit about career connections. Again, it is focused on disadvantaged schools. So there's, the program has a definition of what meets that criteria. But the overarching goal is really to try to get energy efficiency, sustainability into the minds of K through 12 students. And obviously there's age appropriate lessons and resources available for each of the grades. In high school, that program actually looks at how do you expose people into careers, present career paths to them, maybe even give them an opportunity to develop or to undertake an internship. The targets and the audience is there on the screen there. This is a 3-year program with a target of reaching 30,000 students, 1,000 teachers, and the vast majority of those schools will be disadvantaged schools based on the implementer's definition. Next, Melanie. Career and workforce readiness, this is intended for people that are over 18 and that meet the definition of a disadvantaged worker. We have a definition of what a disadvantaged worker is, and I know it's very small on the screen there, but at a very high level, it's people that have personal barriers to employment. It could be language related, it could be income related, education, perhaps issues that might have come up in their lives with the criminal justice system. And they are, there's also disadvantaged zip codes that come from state provided data. So this program is going to reach 1,000 participants. Due to attrition, 700 of those will be placed into energy jobs, and about 500 will be sort of seen through a year-long employment time period. This is what I would call the true workforce development program. When I hear the word, or when a lot of us hear the word for the term for workforce development, that encompasses a lot of things, and not all programs operate the same. But workforce development, could include social services. It could be soft skills training. It could be technical training. And this is a program that provides that for disadvantaged workers in California. Next. So both of those programs just launched about a year ago, and they're 3-year programs. So we're still learning about the program. And if people are interested, later this year, we're targeting November, we will have a webinar where the implementers of the program will provide an update on what they've learned so far. The training partners are across the state of California, ranging from San Diego to the Inland Empire, the Central Valley, and then as far north as the San Francisco Bay Area and Chico. So again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but there you have an idea of the kinds of professions that people might be placed into after they participate in the program. Next. And then we have what we call integrated energy education and training. So this is the program where we develop programs and classes. Sometimes they're hour-long webinars, sometimes they're year-long monthly meetings. Where we really try to identify what people need to know to design better buildings, build them, install equipment efficiently, and then also to maintain them. And we also collaborate with other organizations that have a similar audience. So we cannot train the California workforce alone. So we need to collaborate with other organizations that do. So that can include the union training programs, it could include community-based organizations, community colleges, et cetera. So, training the incumbent workforce and collaborating with other organizations is kind of the core of IEET. Next, Melanie. So there's, our target audience. You can probably do 2 more clicks if you will, please. So the audience is, like I said, the incumbent workforce and people that are going to enter the workforce. But it could also be people transitioning from one career type to another. There you also see a sample of the occupations that we serve. We don't serve everybody, but we do serve quite a few number of occupations. And then our classes are organized into different tracks based on either the building type or a technology type or a system type. Most recently, we've identified or we've created a cross-cutting track on electrification. So we have a goal of, by the end of 2026, our workforce education and training programs, half of them will be focused on electrification. Electrification is important, it's not going away. Not only the buildings electrifying, but the grid's going to electrify as well at different paces, within California and across the US. Next. So a little bit about the occupations that we're going to focus on today. There's a lot of information out there, and some of you may be aware of these resources already. So we do have the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I have some slides coming up that gives you a little bit more information about those 2 professions, building operators and facility managers. And then I know this audience in different parts of the United States, so check your state websites. We here in California have something that drills down a little bit more than the national website does. You can look up different career types and see a lot of different data about those jobs and careers. Next. So while I was preparing for this webinar, I did do a little bit of research, and I just want to present a little bit of what I found here. So for building operators and facilities managers, the outlook for, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is national data, is looking pretty good, on par. There's about a 7 to 8% increase in jobs overall. And that has to do with people, switching careers or people going into retirement. So both building operators and facilities managers, they're kind of keeping up. I think, facilities managers, it looks like there is actually a little bit more increase than the average across all careers. 4,000 jobs per year across the United States will be available compared to 29,000 for facilities managers. There you see a little bit of information about the income levels for across the United States, and then I pulled some data for California as well. But I think what's maybe even more important to today's topic is the desired qualities, and what are people looking for? What are employers looking for as it relates to building operators and facilities managers? So I'm seeing some similarities there. Detail oriented. Buildings are complex, and you need somebody on staff that really is not only detail oriented, but is curious and motivated to just figure out, what's going on and how is, if I change something on the HVAC side, what's the impact of that on the energy consumption side of things, not to mention occupant well-being. You can go into the data yourself. I pulled a little bit of a couple of quotes there from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I want to read them here because I think it's very relevant to today's topic. And that is that a continuing focus of the environmental impact and energy efficiency of buildings will keep facilities managers in demand, maybe even high demand. And then smart building technology is expected to affect the work of facilities managers, and I would also include building operators over the next decade. Next, Melanie. And this data comes from another report, and I'm spacing on the name of it, but it's a US labor or US energy jobs report that came out in 2020, I believe. And I can put, maybe Melanie, I can follow up with you or somebody else at the Smart Building Center to provide the links to these reports. But I was able to find some hiring challenges. This is for California, but the report actually has different sections dedicated to each state. So you can look up your own state as well. But in California, looking at the energy efficiency side of things, the top 3 reasons for hiring challenges include lack of experience, the competition. So it's actually a small applicant pool, which I found pretty interesting. And I think Laure-Jeanne, you might touch on that later on today, that these are great careers, and some of them require a 2-4 year college degree, and others don't. Others have a better path is going through trade schools. And then they're also having difficulty finding industry-specific knowledge, skills, and interests. So I think everybody on the panel today has something to say and offer as it relates to hiring difficulties. And then in terms of, again, this is energy efficiency in California, but the 3 most difficult occupations to fill include management. So those are the directors, the supervisors, and vice presidents of different consulting companies, or maybe facilities managing companies, sales, marketing, customer service, and then installation workers. Again, there's where our building operators and obviously technicians, electricians as well. So lots of opportunities there. Next, Melanie, please. And I think this is where I want to look to our subject matter experts, and we'll be presenting in not quite the order that you're seeing there, but Laure-Jeanne will kick it off. And I think what I want to do now is maybe not read their entire bios, but also just maybe give you a small introduction for each of our speakers. So Laure-Jeanne is a vice president at the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, better known as IREC. There she manages oversight and strategic direction for the workforce program. She also leads IREC standards development and revision activities. So, and then Melanie is going to go after Laure-Jeanne. Melanie's with our Smart Building Center, and she has spent her entire career in the power and energy efficiency industries. She's worked with utilities across the United States, and her work entails serving the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council and the Smart Building Center as the Director of Education and Training, and for the BOC program as well, Building Operator Certification Program. Maric Munn is a principal at San Timoteo Associates here in the Bay Area. She has over 30 years of experience in the fields of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and facilities operations. So I think with that, I will turn it over to Laure-Jeanne for her presentation introduction.
Okay. Thank you so much, Robert. And thanks to the planning team for having IREC here today. Really thrilled to be with all the remote folks. Thank you for being with us in real time, and hopefully others will join us at their convenience, which is the great thing about this kind of conference. So as Robert mentioned, I'm with IREC, as we're affectionately known. I've spent my entire career in workforce development, the past 15 years or so in building performance, and now have expanded my portfolio to renewables with IREC. Don't be fooled by the name. IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, does cover the full scope of clean energy technologies, including energy efficiency, building electrification. We're starting to encroach on electric vehicle infrastructure projects, et cetera. So everything it's going to take to have a decarbonized and clean energy future. So we are an independent nonprofit. We have been around for 40 years, working to increase access to clean energy technologies for all Americans. So we've always had a diversity bent, and we're really pleased that we brought the rest of the world along with us. We do this through state regulatory engagement, local initiatives to support communities who have bold clean energy goals, and workforce development. Next slide, please, Melanie. So on the workforce front, as Robert was mentioning, there's a lot going on in workforce, certainly the training and education, but we focus on all the elements needed to build a healthy, clean energy workforce ecosystem, from the recruitment and outreach, which is really a pain point for our industry right now, right? To the training and credentials that we all know and love, with resources and support for a wide range of stakeholders. I will not have time to discuss all these programs, of course, today, but we'll focus on a few in my comments that are most relevant to this audience. Next slide, please. So we come to you today, the timing could not have been more auspicious. We stand on the threshold of great opportunity to address ever more complex and critical challenges. Certainly, clean energy job growth has been robust. It was robust through some not great political time periods. It's even more robust now. We have an Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and now the IRA to help fuel that. The feds are going to help fuel our acceleration that we need so much to reach the bold clean energy goals on everyone's part. It's not just federal. We know the states and local municipalities were carrying this for a while, and now they have the federal government on board again. Many of these entities have very bold clean energy goals with matching investment now, finally. So, and as Robert was mentioning, this is not just the stakeholders Robert's speaking to in California. I can tell you across the country and across clean energy technologies, whether it's solar, whether it's building operations, whether it's battery storage, lack of qualified workers or lack of workers, period. In some cases, they'll even take them and train them, but they can't get the bodies in the door, is identified as the top barrier to market expansion. IREC operates a group I'll tell you more about in just a bit, the National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance. We have polled over 500 active members, and they are citing generally the same concerns and pain points that Robert was citing in his data from the state of California. Next slide, please. And we also know, as Robert was mentioning, there are significant structural barriers, whether they be societal, social, training and education, to bringing learners and workers into the clean energy trades. Not only that, Robert did cite some pain points in sales and management. We need those folks too, but a lot of what we're lacking are construction and the trades, electrical, et cetera. Guys, we've done a really good job disincentivizing these careers through the past few decades. So no surprise, we are lacking folks who want to enter construction and other trades. At the same time, certainly construction's been around a long time. People generally know what construction workers do. They don't know what building operators do. They don't know what clean energy workers are out in the workplace doing, except for a very limited cohort of Americans today. We're all still lacking clearly defined training and other pathways. Even folks like Melanie's group, who are doing great work in the certification arena, we still have a fairly patchy and disconnected framework. We're working on it, but we've got a ways to go. And we certainly want to start working against that kind of cultural disincentivization, if that's a word, of these types of careers, for sure, because as Robert was mentioning, we have a lot to offer, especially youth of today. And then we do know there are additional barriers for diverse workers, folks from underserved communities, other populations who have not historically had a seat at the table, both with respect to access to clean energy technology itself, but also the jobs that we hope will come with this clean energy transition. And the government survey that Robert cited earlier also tells us that the clean energy workforce is less diverse by a few percentage points than the broader energy sector and the broader economy. So we've got a ways to go there. I did say the question in the chat, and I can give a partial response to that now before I move on, and others can weigh in. Just how do we ensure that these new workers can be successful in their positions when they may not have come from what we call maybe a traditional educational background, and may have lacked some of the tools and resources kind of coming up through the educational system that they may have needed to be successful in a career. Robert mentioned earlier that, workforce is a partnership. It's not just one siloed interaction. You'll see many of the successful workforce programs, for instance, PG&Es, for instance, those of the other panelists on this call today, are partnerships. One entity cannot give every worker every type of support they need to enter the workforce and be successful in a family sustaining career pathway. So we mentioned some of the societal, social, training and education, personal barriers. Typically, you will see a team of workforce and social support experts supporting that worker as they enter the workforce. If that support's not in place, that retention level that Robert was showing will drop. The other piece we're concerned about and need to keep an eye on is employer education and support, so that the culture and the environment when these folks arrive in the employer environment are supportive and they are understood and embraced as whole people. So they, which we know it's a nice thing, but it also can support with data that assists with retention of workers. Next slide, please. I'm here clicking on my screen and can never stop myself. However, lots of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. We have a lot to offer, especially these newer generations coming up who are more cognizant and conscious of the climate, environmental, and societal issues that we wish to address with the clean energy transition. We've got a tight labor market, folks. It's incumbent on us to ensure that these jobs we have for workers are quality jobs, family sustaining jobs, to contribute to what we call a just energy transition. These learners and workers can have an opportunity to contribute to solutions in their local communities and more broadly, certainly to address the climate emergency, their own community's resilience, whether it comes to climate-related weather or other emergencies. And certainly on the energy efficiency and building operations side, we know that we impact health. Wow, that's a great package to offer to a mission-driven person. And we also have a lot of options. We have anything from the entry-level construction type jobs up through the sales and management, the leaders in our industry. We need them too. It's not just the technical and craft jobs. There are many advancement pathways. I'll show a couple later. So yeah, we are ready for workers. We just need some more infrastructure and outreach to support them. So I'm going to go really quickly through some resources and solutions that IREC has to address some of these challenges that we're talking about. And then our other panelists will also have some additional solutions to share, and then we'll address your questions in the discussion. Next slide, please. So IREC, please bookmark this website, cleanenergyclearinghouse.org, if you're talking about things like smart buildings like we are this week. Lots of resources for both distributed energy as well as smart buildings and related resources. There is a lot of content in here for code and safety officials if you're interacting with any of those folks, but also a scat of information for building owners and operators about all these new technologies that we want to see so we can operate our buildings more effectively. Next slide, please. So we've got a lot in this clearinghouse, a wide variety of resources, video, infographics, reference guides, checklists, short courses, pretty much something for every learner or worker to bring to their job to operate more effectively with clean energy and smart building technologies. And we are continuously updating this over the next couple years. So if you've gone once, you're going to want to bookmark and visit and come again. You can go through 2 slides, Melanie. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. And we also have a learning management system with more full-blown courses. In the building operations realm, a new course we have coming up soon is focused on the higher education environment, our institutional partners who are operating a wide range of interesting buildings in the same facility. And so we'll have some, certainly general building operations information in that training, but also specific to their environments where they're operating a wide range of buildings and types. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier career exploration resources. So I'm showing here one of IREC's 3 career maps. This is the Green Buildings career maps. These help potential learners and workers and those supporting them explore an expanding universe of clean energy careers, including over 100 jobs across our maps, hundreds of possible career pathways for advancement, and rich detail, including training, education, and credentials needed to do these jobs, and salary information. Here I'm showing our most recent map. We also have solar and HVACR career maps on our website. I can drop that link in just a moment. And you'll notice here, if you have really good eyes like I do not, that we have a whole section of this Green Buildings career map focused on building operations and facility management with a range of job roles within encompassed within that. So encourage you to check that out. I am dropping the link. And I think I have one more slide and I'll pass the baton to Melanie. Yeah, so I mentioned this group earlier. Encourage folks to sign up for updates from this group. This was formed by IREC really in our response to all the focus on workforce development and the need to do things like eliminate duplication of effort. All of us don't need to develop the same curriculum. We can share resources and information. So this is our attempt to do that. The National Clean Energy Workforce Alliance is a unique project uniting clean energy workforce stakeholders from across the sector. So this is not technology specific. We view it as one of our roles to support the technology specific convenings that are out there, of which there are many. Again, our goal is to eliminate wasteful duplication of effort by identifying and scaling best practices and resources that are already out there, while charting a path forward to address remaining workforce gaps and challenges, which we definitely have those too. We will be publishing some initial findings this fall, so please keep an eye on our website. And thank you for your time and attention today. Passing things to Melanie, and happy to answer questions later.
Thanks, Laure-Jeanne. Okay. And thank you for the introduction, Robert. Happy to be here. Thanks everyone for joining us at Smart Buildings Exchange 2022. I'm Melanie Danuser, excuse me, Director of Education and Training here at the Smart Buildings Center, host of SBX and the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council. Just a little bit about our organizations, if you haven't heard already in the past day and a half of sessions. I work for not one, but 2 nonprofits. I have the benefit of doing that. I work for the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council, which is a business association of the energy efficiency industry, whose mission is to promote energy efficiency policies, programs, and technologies that create jobs and foster economic growth and environmental improvement here in the Northwest. NEEC has been around for 25 or so years. And then in the past decade, a little over probably half a decade, we also established the Smart Buildings Center Education Program, a 501c3 nonprofit that really focuses and believes in the smarter use of technology and practices in the built environment, particularly as they relate to what we're talking about today, building operations and management, and how that will really enable a cleaner, healthier, and more productive future. So we try to establish our work through the Smart Building Center through thought leadership for smart technologies and practices within the built environment. And then we have kind of 3 pillars of activity to achieve our mission, which is enabling demonstration projects. We have connecting the industry through events like Smart Buildings Exchange, and then also education and training, which is what I'll talk a little bit more about today, the Smart Buildings Center Building Operator Certification Program. So in this intro section, I will touch on the BOC program, our content, our credentials, where we are as an accredited training program, where we're going, and how we plan to get there. Next slide, please. Thank you. This really just outlines our mission. So the mission of the BOC program is to elevate the profession of the building operator through training in energy efficiency and smart building technologies, continuing education, and credentials. We really believe that the skilled workforce provides energy and resource savings and efficiency to building owners, managers, and organizations. And Laure-Jeanne already kind of queued it up, Robert as well. You know, we're here to really elevate this profession, and part of elevating it is actually spreading the word that building operators exist, and that the profession is a really good one to get into. So brief history of the BOC program. I mentioned NEEC has been around since the mid-1990s. BOC followed quickly on the heels of the establishment of NEEC. It is a training and credentialing program focused on optimizing the energy performance of buildings while also prioritizing health, safety, comfort of our occupants. Our audience has historically been building operators, which is a broad term for professionals who work in facilities, operating and maintaining buildings. In recent years, though, we've really expanded and seen our student makeup change a bit. We're seeing more energy managers and professionals whose work intersects with operations and maintenance, whether they're in procurement or administration, as we're seeing new policies, which I think is really a key positive sign that organizations are viewing buildings more comprehensively and understanding the total impact that they have on the environment, their employees, and anyone who works or lives in those buildings. Next slide, please. Let's see, this visual I think really shows we offer training and credentialing at 3 levels. We've talked already a bit today about partnerships and how we can work together to recruit individuals into this field, retain individuals in this field. And I often get a little overwhelmed at what I feel is the amount of work to be done, and remind myself what the role of our program is, which is to offer some real relevant and comprehensive training and some career pathways for individuals in facilities. So in order to do that, we offer training at 3 levels. We recently, in 2020, I believe, added the fundamentals of energy efficient building operations training, designed for those who do not have experience in building operations, unlike eligibility for our level 1, which requires 2 years, as we're starting to see and hopefully see that pipeline building of new employees coming into building operations. And we have level 1 and level 2. And this visual also shows the credential structure. So we have 4 separate credentials, 3 on the training side, 1 on the certification side. And going back to our mission, in order to fulfill that mission, we feel it's really important to provide this clear credential structure so those looking to start and further their career in facilities have an understanding of the credentials available to them through our program specifically. Next slide, please. All right, another visual here, which we like to use, and it's our scaled down version of a career map, showing how the different levels of training align with one's career pathway. Second, that grab the links from Laure-Jeanne from the chat when you can. Really great, comprehensive, holistic career maps that IREC has put together. This is one that shows the trajectory through building operator certification, training, and credentials themselves. Again, fundamentals, our entry-level training really lays the foundation for individuals to pursue a career focused on energy efficient building operations, touches on different building systems and instilling this energy efficiency ethic that I know, at least I sometimes take for granted working in the energy efficiency field. And then from there, students can move or enter directly into level 1 if they have 2 years of experience into our level 1 training, which focuses on building systems maintenance. And our level 1 classes support the BOC operator skills standard. We devote significant amount of time to HVAC systems, controls, common opportunities for operational improvements, and/or environmental quality, which is even more important in the past 2.5 years. And also we touch on building scoping in level 1. And I also want to just pause and spend a little time discussing the BOC skills standard that I mentioned, as it is the basis for all of our training and curriculum. The skills standard that we use was actually originally developed in 2011 with funding from Department of Energy. And the driver behind this was NEEC wanted to ensure the content at the time, which had been around for a little bit and was starting to scale nationally from here in the Pacific Northwest. We just really wanted to ensure that that content aligned with the skills that employers needed from building operators, those working and maintaining buildings, and actually aligned with job responsibilities that those individuals performed. So we then used that skills standard to conduct a gap analysis so we could fill gaps in content. And then in 2015, we updated the skills standard when we developed our ISO 17024 aligned certification program. And now it's, our sense, the whole basis of this conference is that buildings and the responsibilities of our students and building operators have really changed enough to warrant an update to the skill standard. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. But finishing off this slide, you see we also have finishing off the levels of BOC, and the trajectory for our students is level 2, which we really see as our advanced or master level credential. In the past few years, we updated the BOC level 2 coursework to really prepare operators to evaluate the operational performance of their buildings, to focus on that energy efficiency, carbon reduction, getting their buildings in compliance with, ever more stringent policies. And level 1 and level 2 both include project assignments. We understand the importance of not only, talking and learning, but also applying what you're learning through our training programs. So students in level 2, actually, after they complete their project assignments, it culminates with kind of a thesis presentation in the last class where they present their building walkthrough plan, where they've identified opportunities to improve performance, tying back to our mission of elevating the profession, giving these operators and maintenance professionals the understanding that they are key to their performance of their buildings. They have a voice, and with some communication skills, they can really suggest some improvements to their facilities. So again, the role of the Smart Building Center and the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council, we are the national administrator of the Building Operator Certification Program, and we are here to ensure that our curriculum and content serves the knowledge and skills of our learners. So to fulfill this role, we use the skills standard, a job task analysis, and a knowledge blueprint to define the needs and guide the focus of the curriculum content. Robert mentioned earlier, PG&E has some new goals for training programs through Pacific Gas and Electric. So some content remains static, but a lot of it is very dynamic, and there's a lot of changes happening in the landscape of building operations. So we, on an annual basis here, receive feedback from learners, instructors, our sponsors and supporters, which we integrate into an annual curriculum review. And we then integrate that feedback into annual curriculum updates, which really serve the program goals of maintaining a relevant and up-to-date curriculum. However, if you want to go ahead to the next slide, Britton, thank you. In recent years, there's been wider spread implementation of smart building technologies, not as widespread as one would think. I was in one of our sessions yesterday, and a statistic was thrown out that something like over 80% of buildings might not have control systems in place. So how do we meet students where they are, knowing that where they need to be is approaching even faster than any of us I feel like are ready for. So anyway, in recent years, we understand the landscape is changing. There's new smart building technologies. There's new carbon reduction strategies. There's policies at local, state, national levels that are really bringing significant change to the scope of the building operator, what they're being asked to do, how they're spending their time. We had the pandemic changed the way buildings operate, changed the expectations of building occupants and owners and managers to be able to retain people who are living and working in those buildings, as demands from occupants are changing and really demanding more from buildings. So really proud of where we've come, especially over the last few years. We've extended our reach. We added the fundamentals course that I mentioned for entry-level participants, and also trying to, again, go back to those partnerships with community organizations, colleges, trying to reach unemployed or underemployed workers who are looking for a pathway into clean energy jobs. We've also added a multifamily. We're piloting a multifamily adaptation of our BOC Level 1 training this fall. We've updated several classes to expand coverage of some of the emerging technologies, added a supplemental class on smart building technologies covering topics that you've heard about throughout the conference: the Internet of Things, networking, DER, distributed energy resources, grid interactive, efficient buildings. And with these improvements, we're really trying to keep pace with changes in building technologies and practices. But there's more to be done. So in the coming year, we will really focus our efforts on this strategic planning that you see here on this slide. A broad strategic planning effort, the goal of which is to update the BOC skills standard I referenced earlier to reflect the current workforce needs and create this roadmap for near-term and future curriculum objectives, in addition to our annual curriculum update cycle, as well as continuing our work of designing engaging and digestible content through effective delivery strategies, which is changing. It really is, our attention spans are getting shorter, and these kind of, micro bits of content are becoming more popular. So how can we not only keep the content up to date, but keep the delivery methods and strategies effective for our learners as well? So as our strategic planning process is underway, we'll be looking to sponsors and supporters, industry associations, our board members from both the SBC and NEEC to be involved in helping create this next evolution for the BOC program and curriculum. We're also keenly aware of the need to reach individuals and communities from previously underserved communities by training programs, BOC included, with, I think it was last year, with generous support from the DOE Workforce Accelerator program. We recently analyzed how the BOC program and other SBC programs are reaching different demographic audiences. And that was really helpful, because now we know where we are. We can outline how we can improve by coordinating with organizations that provide some of the wraparound services to address barriers to training and employment, strengthening on-ramp programs, how we compare our fundamentals with other programs existing in the community, connecting with pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. All of this really strengthening the connections between other training programs, organizations like those on today's session. So let's see, I also just wanted to touch on another component of this process. I've outlined our existing credential structure, our existing training content and curriculum, and now we are at a place to assess, is there actually an industry need for a credential or a micro credential or even a specific track in BOC for students to learn more about smart buildings, technologies, policies that are affecting, the smart buildings operator, as we'll call it. So It's important to really understand what efforts are already underway to offer degrees, credentials. Laure-Jeanne mentioned, minimizing that duplicity of work. So if you want to go ahead to the next slide, what do you do when you want to know what everyone else is doing? You establish an advisory group. So thanks to those who are serving on our advisory group, which is really set out to outline the knowledge, skills, and abilities, again, those KSAs that the industry and our stakeholders view as critical for the building workforce. Some areas we are highlighting, you can see here, mirror the topics of Smart Buildings Exchange and some that were already mentioned this morning in this session, the adoption and awareness of electrification that's coming, that's here, smart building technologies, grid interactive efficient buildings, and then the operation of high performing buildings themselves. So in summary, we offer a credentialing program, different levels, and we're doing a lot more, and that's with the help of supporters, stakeholders, and with partnerships, like some of the ones with my fellow panelists today. So I apologize if I ran a little bit long, but we'll go over to Maric. And Britton, maybe before Maric takes over, I think maybe one of the audience members has their hand up for a question.
Yeah, Amy, you have your hand up. If you want to ask a question, why don't you go ahead and do so now? Okay, I see that your talking has been permitted, but you are muted, so you might want to. And if not, then we can pick your question up after Maric. So Maric, why don't you go ahead?
Great, thank you so much. And thank you, Melanie and Robert and Laure-Jeanne, for the incredible resources that you've brought to the field here that I and my staff have made use of extensively throughout the years. So if I could get the next slide, please. So again, my name is Maric Munn. I have about a 30-year time frame of being in energy efficiency, renewables, and more recently, facilities operations. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And before I formed my own company, Timoteo Associates, I spent 10 years as facility director at UC San Francisco at a time when we brought up a brand new campus down in Mission Bay out of what was once a Southern Pacific Railway maintenance yard. So a few challenges there. We had all kinds of different buildings, and we consider it a big success story that we were able to pull this off. But along the way, I learned a lot about challenges of working with new buildings and new technologies. And I think today I may have more problems than solutions to share with you, but I'm very glad that our other panelists have lots of great solutions. So if we could go on to the next slide, please. So my team, here you see on the left-hand side, just a link to our webpage, was pretty typical for a large higher education university. We had building operating engineers, skilled trades, building maintenance workers, landscape custodial, as well as a professional engineering group and project management group, energy managers, sustainability managers, water conservation. And I would say at the beginning of my tenure, we had extremely low diversity in regards to gender. We had, out of all our skilled trades and building operators, we had one woman out of about 130 staff. So part of the challenge, I think, is attracting early career women into this field and bringing a little bit more gender diversity into it. So next slide, please. You can see on the left here just a list of the different buildings that either came up out of the ground or were on the way while I was at UCSF. And we had everything from high-level office buildings to cardiovascular research buildings to cancer research buildings with lots of biosafety level 3 labs, very toxic materials that our staff had to learn to deal with. And the one thing that was consistent about all these buildings is that there was always something new for my staff to grapple with, whether it was cool beams, whether it was heat recovery chillers, more and more complex building automation systems. And I would say that you can see by this list, it's not exactly cutting or bleeding edge technology, mainly because I threw myself in front of the steamroller and said, you know, if you can't show me that this thing has been successful before, I can tell you right now that a building with infectious agents is not the place to try it out. And so, but even with that, there was new technology for my staff to grapple with. The thing that came out of this new technology is that was just an overwhelming amount of data from these different systems that went in. And this is a big issue when you have an operations staff that are run off their feet trying to deal with hot and cold calls and other problems in buildings. And all of a sudden, you know, they're just a fire hose of data coming at them. I remember a time when I talked to my chief engineer about the building automation system. Every single building was in alarm. And I said, what do you do about that? And he just kind of shook his head. So I think this is a huge challenge for us going forward, is learning how to manage and tame this amount of data coming out of our buildings. And another area that I think is a challenge that hopefully we are beginning to address with a lot of this training is that the turnover process from design construction into operations of buildings is a very fragile time. Oftentimes, folks want to move into the building before it's quite done. You have a temporary certificate of occupancy. Construction is still going on. People are trying to do their work. And sometimes we don't get the documentation we need in operations. Oftentimes commissioning is done kind of in a vacuum without the operations staff. And so I think there's a lot of work and opportunity right here in bringing new smart buildings over into operations and more attention being paid at that point. And then I think someone mentioned before, there's a lot of opportunities for job growth in facilities management, energy management, and building operations. And this is in part driven by an absolute tidal wave of retirements coming along for senior staff. And so we have a huge challenge of capturing that institutional knowledge that is going out the door with folks who have lived in these buildings for many years and know the ins and outs, and trying to get that knowledge across to our incoming staff. So next slide, please. So some of the solutions, I don't have all problems. Some of the solutions we were able to implement to start to grapple with was creating a specialty controls and commissioning group within facilities management. And I can't take credit for this. This came directly from my staff. And as director, I felt my job was to say, yes, that's a great idea, get them the resources and get out of their way. But this was a combination of some professional engineers, some incredible data analytics professionals, one of whom I think might have been on a panel earlier here, Gabe Sandoval, and also the operating engineers. And what we were able to do was to bring a couple of the building operations folks kind of out of the day-to-day firestorm of what's going on in the buildings, and give them, slowing the pony down a little bit, giving them the time to start to grapple with the data and make sense of it, along with the resources of having an engineer and super data analytics stars, to really begin to inform the building operators about the decisions that they make and what impact it has on the building's energy efficiency, sustainability, and comfort levels. So that's one area that I think this combination of data and operations is incredibly powerful. And I'm really pleased to see the building operations certification program really kind of focusing on bringing in this knowledge about what to do with some of the data. So I think this is really going to be a trend in the future. The other thing that I think is really important is having an analyst who can understand the maintenance data itself. I think I don't know if it was Laure-Jeanne or Melanie, you said, a lot of people don't understand what facilities operators do. And, that's because we're typically invisible until something goes wrong and then all heck breaks loose. So I think that being able to understand the maintenance, looking at the work orders, being able to really understand what's going on in buildings, and being able to work with building occupants and educate them about what their buildings can and can't do, and why things are happening is an incredibly important field, and one that I'm hoping will, come into training programs in the future. And then the other, to sort of start to address this gender inequity in the group, I was able to work directly with the building operator in Building Operation Engineers Union, and create an apprenticeship program specifically targeted at bringing women into this field. And I think I mentioned when I got there, we had one woman out of about 130. When I left, we had 10, so still not stellar, but it was a definite improvement in this. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done directly with unions and apprenticeship programs to really encourage women and underrepresented people of color and other disadvantaged groups to come in and really get a foothold in this type of career. So next slide, please. So some of the things I've been doing since I retired as facility director was to decide I wanted to continue to work on some of these gaps and continue to help green buildings meet their potential. And so teamed up with a program called the Climate Corps that's run by a really amazing nonprofit, Strategic Energy Innovations. And this program brings very early career professionals who've just graduated from college and are, I think, as Laure-Jeanne, you said, mission-driven individuals who are excited about doing something about sustainability and energy efficiency, and working with them directly on a hands-on practicum where they are sited within an organization's facilities department. And we work with them to learn how buildings work, how green buildings work, how to read an engineering drawing, the things they need as a basis for doing their work. And that also can lead to really important projects and progress for the facilities management department. And so it's a great kind of win-win situation where the fellow gets 10 months of really practical training. The institution gets 10 months of very inexpensive support, and they're teaching a fellow at the same time, and end up with projects of lasting value. And the other aspect of what we're doing with practicum is, again, one-on-one career mentoring, specifically oriented towards women and BIPOC folks that are wishing to enter the green building career. And this is because we are doing this practicum teaching with late career professionals, and we've all been all over the map and probably know just about everyone in the local environment. But I see this, again, this kind of network building as incredibly important for early career professionals, and giving them paths to really get to know one another, get to know people in fields that sound interesting to them. And I think this is a real opportunity that we can go forward with in the future to help these entry-level folks develop career paths, get organizations to really try and develop career ladders, which Laure-Jeanne, I was very excited to see that work that IREC has been doing on that front. So this is, again, a big opportunity I see in the future. And next slide. Here's some examples just of what we've done with the practicum for a couple of institutions, 2 junior colleges, community colleges, and a law school. And again, you can see it was all very practical to begin with, getting the facilities department information they needed to know about their equipment that they were maintaining. Creating document libraries with engineering drawings and O&M manuals and so forth. Again, just forming a basis of what an operations team needs to do their work. At the same time, training a climate fellow on how buildings work, what you need to run them. We also did a lot of work following on to classes that many of them took at the Pacific Energy Center on energy efficiency, with actually doing some good analysis, both of energy billing, building automation system information, and so forth. And then they had some special projects that ran everywhere from doing troubleshooting of innovative designs, occupant education programs, project managing some pretty intensive lighting controls and other energy efficiency retrofit opportunities, and then really working on some asset management programs with the firm belief that I have that a well-maintained building is a sustainable building. When you're getting the life out of the equipment that you have and running it efficiently, that is your best bet for really keeping the promise of a green building. So some practical examples there. Next slide. So some of the things that I see in the future coming up, we are having, again, the wave of retirement in facilities operations and really needing to bring tech-savvy early career professionals both into the operations field and into the field of data analytics. So capturing that institutional knowledge is a true challenge, and that's something we're working to address with the practicum program. This ability to pair up folks with data analytics folks with operations staff, I really think is a rich one to explore. Again, operations staff are typically run off their feet. You come to work in the morning thinking you're going to do one thing, and it turns out nothing like that. And so, being able to, on the fly, being able to analyze the data to make decisions is very difficult. So having someone in a support position that can deal with building information, I think is really important to supporting operations staff. But at the same time, I believe very strongly the building operator certification classes, getting the operators to know that there are things to be done with the data, know what is possible in their buildings, and that they can look for support and help with dealing with, I think is an incredibly important piece of this as well. So I think, Melanie, you had mentioned, developing additional credentialing programs. This is going to be really important coming up. And then continuing to work on apprenticeship programs or other ways to bring in more women and BIPOC candidates, as well as educating building operators, owners on what types of career ladders should be made available to folks as they do come into facilities operations, so that they can be competitive for this very sort of precious area of folks that are interested in building still, and can really work to attract and retain folks. So I think that's, again, my view of things coming from facilities operations, kind of bottoms up, and so excited to be here with folks that are working to train these same people that I've been working with for years. And Robert, I think I will turn it back to you at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Maric, and Melanie, and Laure-Jeanne as well. Excellent content, a lot to digest. And I think, we could all go on for a few more hours. But I do want to maybe address a couple of questions that have come in. I think it looks like Lisa Espinos might have a two-part question, so I'll just read it. Laure-Jeanne, I think you touched on it, so feel free to chime in if you want, but you did touch on it. But Lisa is asking, how will you help ensure that the new workforce can be successful in their positions when they may not have the education or the tools to be effective in the energy efficient programs? And I'll ask the second part of her question as well, because I think it might have been a two-parter. She goes on to say that as codes change and energy efficiency becomes even more difficult to achieve, so the bar is always being raised, I think, as it should be in a lot of cases. What tools are you providing or are you exploring to help new employees be successful? So Melanie or any of the panelists, I could add a couple of comments, but I want to give you a first opportunity.
Sure, and really good question. I think the answer is we have to give them the tools. You know, I think the question is wrapped in if they don't have them. And Laure-Jeanne, I think we'll touch on this maybe in a bit, but there's no shortage of training programs, accessible, affordable training programs. But how do we make those connections so that those who are exploring a career period and might not know about clean energy, we've talked a lot about it today, that building operators are kind of the hidden, I think CUNY, BPL put together this webinar series a few years ago, the Heroes in the Basement was the title, because they're not seen. So the first challenge is informing those looking to get into careers, retraining adults, and let them know about these careers, and then connect those looking for jobs with the resources out there. There are a lot of great training programs, a lot of good resources, but we have to make those connections. And I think that's where LJ's work is really important there, that she's going to have these summits with employers, training programs. How can we make these connections? And some progress is being made there, and Maric talking as well about some of the changes that she was seeing as she left the university to building some different diversity, and how you were able to do that as well. I don't know if you want to touch on that, LJ or Maric, but I think the resources are there. It's just trying to connect all the dots and reach the audience we're trying to.
And my perspective is there's also a lot of work to be done with facilities management, facility directors, energy managers, and what have you, just to understand the value of attracting entry-level or retrained staff to meet some of their sustainability goals. There's, as you say, an incredible amount of directives coming down having to do with decarbonization, with energy efficiency. And it's often kind of a mystery to a facility director who may not have a background in that, how you accomplish that. And so being able to see the value in bringing in a trained workforce that knows these skills, I think is a big component of giving these folks the training they need and the support and financial means they need to get their work done. And I will say just there's a couple of organizations, and I think Melanie Neek works with IFMA, the International Facility Managers Association, and I think IREC maybe does too. Yeah, and groups like that I think are going to be really pivotal in getting the management support that's needed for this.
Yeah, I totally agree, Maric. You hit on one of the themes I wanted to touch on with regard to building owners and folks that are kind of overseeing the folks working in facilities. Just have definitely seen out there various approaches, but these technologies are the most successful when they're in buildings where the management has a top-down commitment to these technologies, increasing the efficiency and performance of buildings, because that's where we really see the processes and support for staff operationalized. If that doesn't happen, if it's not in their daily operating procedures, like, okay, this is how we operate this new equipment, it will make your life better, but not if we don't know how to use it. So, there's folks that are doing a really good job at this, and then there's folks that we need to provide additional support and resources to help them integrate this into the day-to-day operations.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, my 2 cents is really around, I'm going to hit on the second part of Lisa's question, which is as the codes change, things become more strict, energy efficiencies, as you state there, is more difficult to achieve. I think there's a couple things that we've done that I think could be helpful to implement in other areas. And one is making sure that people know that the code changes are coming, so that they're not, it's not a big surprise. So through our energy centers, we have classes, as soon as we see a draft of the code, or, it's near completion, and, or, soon after it's been approved, we start holding seminars and webinars, because sometimes those codes are approved one year, but they don't go into effect until, maybe the next year. So we just want to, get ahead of the game, or at least stay with the code to make sure that, on January 1st, of this coming year, this is what you're, going to be faced with. So that's one, is for education institutions to, stay ahead of the game, if not at least stay current. And then the other part is, how can you start meeting these requirements, these energy efficiency requirements that are, arguably already difficult to achieve. And one of, my response is, I think a lot of people need to get out of silos, because there's only so much you can do in lighting alone. There's only so much you can do in HVAC alone. And this is, part of the smart buildings is, even a dumb building, if you will, has multiple components to it. And I know that building operators, they're managing multiple systems on any given day. But I also think it goes back to the design and the installation community to really know, how to integrate the building systems, and make sure that, any efficiencies that the HVAC is capturing, that might allow for, something else in the building envelope or in the lighting. So, one way is, my response is stay current on the energy codes and understand what they're going to mean before they are implemented, or before they take effect, and then also kind of work cross-functionally. So, Lisa, I hope that provides a response to your question.
Just to add on to that a bit, Robert, and I'm dropping the link in the chat. I mentioned quickly when I was talking about IREC's Clean Energy Clearinghouse. In addition to the building owner and operator resources we have in there, we do have code official resources, which may be a little in depth for your kind of average Joe on the street. However, as you said, Robert, for folks that are concerned about their buildings remaining compliant, this is a resource for you. And later in this project, we will be deploying a database of energy codes on that same website. So yeah, again, something to take a look at and bookmark for yourself.
Okay. So if you have questions, so thank you, Lisa, for your questions, but if you have additional questions, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A window. But I do have a specific question for Laure-Jeanne, and that is around, you talked about the 3 career maps that IREC has on its website. So how does IREC decide on what career maps to develop? That's sort of the first part of my question. Is it based on the market? Is it based on employers who step up and kind of say, we have a lot of employment, we see a need for a career map? So you presented 3. What's on deck?
Yeah, it's largely based on, where we see the most critical need, where we're going next with the maps. We have, as I mentioned, we have over 100 job roles on there already that span green buildings or kind of energy in buildings broadly, HVACR, solar, and solar manufacturing. So that's a lot. It's not to say there's not more technologies that have a lot of jobs throughout the US that could be covered. But where we'd like to go next to help kind of solve this problem of, clean energy jobs being behind this veil that no one really knows much about us, is to kind of interconnect our maps and make them even more interactive and in connecting folks to things like training and jobs. So the maps are already interactive, user-friendly. You can already connect to a lot of data, follow up with other resources, but we envision a future in which we have a platform that has a lot more information and a lot more information in different formats that folks like youth and other workers may respond better to than kind of text, for instance. And again, connecting if there is interest demonstrated and how they're interacting with these career exploration materials, connect them to training and or job opportunities based on the interest demonstrated in the platform. So that's a very high level snapshot of where we're looking to go with this. We're not the only ones looking at this issue. Certainly there's folks in other sectors and certainly within clean energy. But we think that the maps position us to kind of launch. We have had interest in things like storage and other things to create additional maps. And certainly the IREC career maps are not the only clean energy maps out there. There's some of the first, and but there are maps for things like wind and biomass on the US Department of Energy website if folks need other sector information.
Okay, excellent. So a couple of questions, and this conference is going to happen, I think, again in 2025. Is that correct, Melanie?
That's our hope, yes.
Okay. All right, that's your goal. So, we're talking about this topic today, and I'm wondering, fast forward 3 years, what kind of workforce development topics do you anticipate, needing in 2025? Is it the same thing? Do we, are there other things that are going to come up? What's your crystal ball telling you for 3 years from today at this conference? And that's a question for anybody. I can start. So I would like to see something, focused specifically on electrification. So, I think, smart buildings are here today, and I would argue they were probably here, several years ago. They're just getting smarter. Electrification certainly in California is up in full gear. My wife and I are in the process of electrifying our home, and it's fun but not cheap in a lot of cases, and it's going to be
challenging, right?
It's challenging,
hard,
yeah.
Even when you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it is. I'm a gadget freak, and so is my wife. She's an energy engineer at a community college, so we're having fun with it. But it's coming in small phases as the budget allows. So that's what I would like to see in 2025. I don't know if the other panelists have something to share.
Yeah, I agree. Electrification will continue to be important in line with our decarbonization goals and the technologies we have to support that. I hope that we will be taking advantage in 3 years of some additional data from the field. There will be a lot of workforce programs that are stood up in the next 3 years, either by utilities like PG&E or by the federal, state, or other entities. And like we did during ARA, the Reinvestment Act, I hope that we will be benefiting from that experience and in a position where we have more successful projects to replicate.
Okay.
I am hoping that we can really start to talk about operations and load management, shaping load curves. Again, there's technologies out there, storage, whether it be battery or chilled water or heating hot water, and how to get operations staff to understand when to run what, and maybe even integrating artificial intelligence in that to support those decisions. But I see that as coming up as very important, both to support our grid here in California, but also for cost management purposes and facilities management.
Melanie?
Thanks, and I hope we'll be talking about how we've really implemented some of the partnerships that we've been talking about and can showcase this robust pipeline of individuals coming into the field, and we can showcase more success stories like Maric's and those from women and people of color, and showcase that we've put our money where our mouth is. We've really implemented these programs, and we have a strong incoming pipeline of those coming into the field and working their way up. So I really hope we can continue. There's great work being done, and I hope we can continue to scale that and showcase some great success stories in a few more years.
Okay, and then each of us hit on this. Looking through what your advice is for people that are looking to enter the building operations or the facilities management side of things. like I said in my opening comments, some people may take the community college or four-year track to enter this profession. Others may come from, the military when they retire. There's, clearly transferable skills there. Some people may go through the trades. I think what we might all agree on is that there's jobs to be had, and job security is there as long as we have commercial buildings that need maintenance and people that need to be comfortable. But what's your advice for somebody that's kind of thinking about this as a career path?
I think Maric will have some advice, having lived it, but from my perspective, just know what you're signing up for. If you're going to take training, I would talk with the training provider about what their curriculum's aligned with, what employers they're working with, and what their job placement data looks like. Or if you're going to kind of skip over that part and go direct to an employer who may have the capabilities to train you in-house, in some cases, depending on where you are, look for employers that have that support in place and are acknowledging where you're coming from. So someone like a vet who is bringing a certain skill set, might be able to get up and running in a higher, supervisory or other capacity, whereas depending on where you are, you'll need different accommodations and support. But yeah, certainly would look for programs that are aligned with industry certifications, such as those from Melanie's organization, and certainly the employer alignment. So you're assured of, there's a lot of jobs open out there. You want to be landing in a program that's training you in accordance with those employers' needs.
I think my advice also is to look at whether you want to be kind of deep and or wide and know a lot about a lot of different things, maybe working for a smaller facility or company, as opposed to getting very, very detailed and deep into one particular aspect of facilities management. And I think there's really exciting things happening on both fronts, but learning a little bit about the breadth of the field and what you could go into through exploring different career path tools, and then deciding, what do you like the best? Do you like doing lots of different things? Do you like doing one thing very deeply and well? I think that's also a really important consideration for anybody entering the field.
Melanie?
I think I would recommend, find your person or your mentor early if you're exploring. There are a ton, of resources out there. We are ready and willing and able to help, but find a person. If you have questions, ask. If I always say, if I don't have actually a lot of the answers, but I know who does, right? And we're willing to make those connections. And if you reach out and have questions about being a building operator and you find out actually maybe you want to be a controls tech, we can connect you with someone who has that position and has been there and done that. So, to Laure-Jeanne's point, do your research, try to think, Maric too, try to think about what you want to be doing, but reach out, hear from, there are a lot of people who are willing to share their experience with you. So yeah, that would be my number one thing. Just reach out, make a good connection. There are people out there willing to share and help you.
Okay, thanks. So we're just a minute or two away from the hour here, but I did want to hit on something that is kind of brand new as of a couple of weeks ago, and that is the Inflation Reduction Act. Laure-Jeanne, you mentioned it. I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'll be, honest that it's been selfish because I want to know what the EV credit is. I want to know the heat pump water heaters.
Not easy to get. Not easy to get.
I want to know how I get a Tesla.
Tesla doesn't qualify. It's over, $80,000, I think. Well, no, it's $55,000 is for the EV, unless it's a truck, I think, or an SUV. Mm-hmm. But I did a little bit of researching. I went to the White House, and it, relevant to today's topic, it hits on a couple of things. One is that, I'm reading from this little briefing that they provided. It says that the expanded tax credits for energy efficient commercial buildings, new energy efficient homes, and EVs charging infrastructure will include bonus credits for businesses that pay prevailing wages and hire registered apprentices. That's pretty major. I expected it. I was, pleasantly surprised to see it. And then it sounds like, again, keeping it relevant to our audience here, seems like there's a 179D deduction for commercial buildings for tax filings. And there's something that says that the energy efficient commercial buildings placed in service after January 1st of 2023 will have the opportunity to qualify under IRA provisions that increase that deduction from $1.88 per square foot to $5 per square foot. So it goes on to say that this is exciting news for the energy efficient commercial building industry. And then if it's a tax exempt organization or building that belongs to a tax exempt organization, then it seems like it goes to the design team. So this is all brand new. So I'm going to dig into a little bit more. But you mentioned the IRA component during your presentation. So I don't know if you have any closing thoughts on that, because this is all pretty exciting.
Yeah, in closing, I think it's historic investment. I think it will transform our industries. Some of the workforce provisions are new, certainly around apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships. This will lend some challenges to the clean energy industry, but also going back to what we talked about, equity and a just transition. This is the provision to help support high road jobs. We have not succeeded in this energy transition if we are leaving the same communities behind that were left behind in our old energy paradigm.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Okay, we are at time. So again, Melanie, Maric, Laure-Jeanne, thank you so much for participating. And I learned a lot. And we, I'll provide some information over to the folks at the SBCX conference for things that I referenced as well. So thank you for the participants, for your valuable time as well. And good luck in making this world a better place.
Yes.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.